Well, again, it's great to see everybody here. We thank you, everybody, for letting us know where you're joining. We very much appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. So we'll go ahead and get started now. First things first, quick introduction on myself. My name is Dylan Vibert. I'm the senior producer here at Bruce Clay Inc., and I'm involved in all of our video productions we do for the company. So that's why I'm here, in case you're wondering, who's this guy? I also host and moderate all of our Q&A sessions we hold for our training members, but I'll share more about that later. As for now, I think it's safe to say that if you're here, you're probably somewhat familiar with SEO or SEO concepts. It's search engine optimization and the tactics we use to optimize our websites for better search results, specifically on Google. Now, we know that Google is constantly changing their algorithms, and it can be very challenging to keep up with all those changes. If you're involved with SEO, you've probably done a ton of keyword research, linking, adding tags, indexing your site, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But even after all that work, it's still not getting you in that top spot. And trust us, we know that can be very frustrating. Now, virtually all businesses moving online, that means that your website is going to be the main gateway for customers to find you. So if they can't find you on the web, you might not be in business long. Now, you probably already knew SEO was important. I mean, why else would you be here, right? But what a lot of people tend to forget is that we're all still learning about SEO. Everybody, including us, even the top ranked sites that have amazing SEO are trying to keep up with it because it's a constant process. That's going to be something you'll hear us say a lot. It's kind of our mantra. So unless you want to spend endless amounts of money to rank at the top as a Google ad, which even if you did have the money, it's still a bad strategy. You're going to have to learn how to better optimize your site organically. Now, I'm going to share with you more info on how you can do that after Bruce's presentation, because the focus of today's webinar is to provide you with valuable tips on something that is often perceived to be out of our control, which is company buy-in. When it comes to SEO, how do we convince upper management to invest in it when we know it to be vital to our success, right? It's kind of a challenging thing that you're trying to get people to buy in and they're not buying in. It's very, very frustrating. Well, this is where Bruce wanted to provide some answers, 6, as a matter of fact, which is what we decided to call this webinar, 6 ways to get company buy-in for SEO. Now, if you haven't heard of Bruce before, you might be thinking, well, why would he have the answers, right? Well, let me give you a background on Bruce, and you can tell me if you think he's qualified enough for this. He started his SEO company in 1996, before Google even existed, and it has since grown into a company where it is now on over 5 different continents. He has trained thousands and thousands of students all across the globe for decades and has been a key presenter at major search conferences like SMX and Affiliate Summit. He's actually going to be speaking at SMX here in a few weeks, so if you're going to be joining there, be sure to tune into his session there. He's also won multiple awards and is quite literally considered the father of SEO. If you do a Google search for that, quite literally type in father of SEO, he owns page 1. So when you're the father of SEO, I imagine that means you know more about it than anybody else. Bruce has been helping countless clients over the past 25 years overcome their SEO mistakes. He's an SEO expert that has been in the business longer than most any specialist out there, and that experience is unmatched in this industry. So if all of that doesn't make him an expert, I guess we just have different standards there. So before I turn it over to him, I just want to emphasize that although we believe these 6 ways can be extremely useful to get your company involved with SEO, we also hope you know that there's way more to this than just convincing management. This is just the tip of the iceberg of not only what is needed, but what we can teach you about SEO. Like I mentioned before, this is a constant learning process, and that's why you need to stay till after Bruce's presentation, where we'll share with you our SEO training membership program. It's a program that will offer you access to tons of SEO training resources from Bruce. And so be sure to stick around for that, because we have a special offer that we're going to provide to you. You'll definitely want to hear more about that. So after we get done with all that, we get to have some fun by taking some questions from you all at the end. It's a great way to ask Bruce your SEO questions directly. And it's always a lot of fun just to kind of chat with people. And we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. So if you want to submit your questions as we're going through the presentation, there's 2 ways to do it. There's a Q&A box in the Zoom window below. That's where we prefer the questions to be submitted. The other way is in the chat box. You can submit them there, but there's a lot of people talking in the thread a lot of times, and sometimes the questions kind of get lost in the conversation. So it's preferred in the Q&A box, but chat box is fine as well. So, all right, we'll get to all of that soon, but for now, thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Bruce, and we'll talk again in a minute. Bruce, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. You know, it's interesting always to listen to my own background, when you're doing it, you kind of just sort of experience the joy of doing SEO. And after a while, it becomes a little bit more and much more fun. So we'll get into the presentation. It's not very detailed in that I'm not going to be able to tell you that in your particular company, you go meet Bill or Sue and tell them this magic sentence and everything's going to be all better. But I am going to give you a lot of overview on the kinds of things that can happen. Now, before I get in and actually list the steps, the things that I think you can focus on, I wanted to give a little bit of an overview from an agency point of view. We have plenty of clients. And, what I have found historically, especially in a larger company, is that marketing somehow does their budget and they decide what they want to do, they figure out what they're going to do, they contract with an agency, they have staff within marketing, but they're going to be dependent upon some resources out of their IT department. And the problem we're going to face is that the IT department maybe doesn't know about them. They haven't budgeted for them. They haven't planned on having any of that happen. And so many times, and I know it is unfortunate because marketing assumes I can create a ticket, it goes into IT, and they've got plenty of resources to implement it. I think that marketing assumes that, but it isn't always the way it works. It isn't the way it works. What we have to do is understand how it works. And part of the process is budget. Just as a sidebar, I just read recently that there was a survey where approximately 60% of SEO fails to get implemented. That you issue tickets, it goes to IT, they look at it as an enhancement, and it's downgraded. It doesn't have the priority of anything else. And that poses a problem for marketing because we have to be able to count on the fact that if I ask for something that's going to increase the traffic to my website 20, 30%, that somebody's going to implement it. And budget often stands in the way. Does IT stretch themselves? Do they say, hey, I got to get this in? Is it a priority for them? Well, unless your IT department has been trained, chances are they don't really see that as important. And that changes the nature, in part, of what we have to do as SEOs. Now, generally, the marketing team will be responsible for setting up SEO. They're going to bring in the agency. They're going to hire the SEO staff as part of marketing. Content is going to be driven by marketing. Sales may have a couple comments here and there. IT may have comments. Other people may throw in comments, but it's marketing that's really typically driving the SEO effort. But it's also true that marketing has an obligation to at least get the key players outside of marketing trained on what it is that is needed from the other departments. And they have to help the other department's budget. For instance, do you need half of a person all the time from your web team? Are you going to need to redesign part of your website? Usually a website redesign is understood, but the rest of it may not be. And the problem from the receiving end, the IT side, is they don't really understand always the consequence of an action in the SEO space. We've had cases where we have made significant changes, and IT was involved. And part of what our recommendation was that they move their data center. Now, it's a serious SEO change, right? You have to move your data center, because if you don't, you're going to have a near-death experience. Now, it's very difficult to tell an IT department to move their data center, but in this particular case, they were doing 1.7 million uniques a month. After the SEO implementation that we laid out for them, they were at 16.4 million uniques a month. And had they not moved their data center, it would have been a near-death experience. So you have to make sure that everybody understands the priorities, that there's one set of marching orders, that the company on a company-wide basis understands the importance of SEO and what SEO is, not just, hi, I've got a line item on my budget to give part of a person to the marketing team. Some of the more successful things it works differently. For instance, if you're a small agency dealing with small local businesses and they only have a 50-page website, and I just pulled that out of the air, it isn't so hard for me to actually manage your website. But if you're on a complex content management system with 1 million pages, or you're a public company, nobody in that company is going to give an outside SEO agency control of their website. So you really need to make sure you work, and I mean diligently work with your team. So let's get into this. The first thing is that you have to actually have relationships with the different organizations. You need to make sure that the people you need in order to implement are your friends. Now, I've heard people say, well, we go out and we have beer and pizza, or I even bring in lunch, or I have, training sessions, and I try to get them up to speed on why we're doing what we're doing. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be a what's in it for them. That's the WIIFT. What is in it for them? Is there an advantage where they're motivated to learn SEO and be good at it, and they're going to stay nights, and they're going to implement, and they're going to learn and learn and learn, and it's because marketing is helping them? Or is it, hey, stay late, do this, and they say, sorry, talk to you next week? And by the way, there's a way around some of that. But overall, it is the relationship with your web implementation team that is going to be almost the number one item about implementing SEO changes. If you cannot implement your SEO changes, your project will fail. So just understand that. Even in our case, and just so you know, I have written into our agreements that they will implement what we give the company to implement. Marketing agrees we're going to implement it. But if you don't have the resources to implement, you're going to fail. Just understand it. It got so bad, maybe I'm giving away secrets here. It got so bad that in our contracts with our clients, we actually give them the ability to suspend the project for up to 2 months. And it's usually because in the first 3-4 months, we are detecting so many significant failures that when they run the IT, it just overwhelms IT, and you just build a great big pile of things that have to be implemented. They don't have the time, they don't have the budget, they don't have the resources. It backs up. It makes SEO not look very effective. So what we do is we just say, okay, perhaps we can help you implement. Perhaps we can switch the content. Perhaps we can do some off-page. But more than likely, there are so many significant things to implement that they pile up. So we have to make sure that we understand the what's in it for them. We have to understand that they have constraints, not just us, that the things that we're recommending are really worth doing. Now, one of the ways that we can do that is the second area, which is show data. Now, showing data, I can walk up to anybody at any time, and if we look at the SEO results, and they'll look and they'll say, hey, we're number 3. But what we have to represent to them is number 1 and 2 is getting 75% of our traffic. I mean, we want that. And that's a bug. Quite frankly, folks, if we have a website and that website is allowing competitors to get our traffic, that's a problem for us. And we really should have an effort to make SEO, if we're not dominant, we have to make that a dominant effort for ourselves. So that's a big thing. Where's the company been? Well, many times we have people come, they say, well, during COVID, our traffic was way up. So how come it went back down when COVID ended? Yep, got it. It went to normal. But the thing to remember is, are you putting an investment in during COVID? Did you keep it maintained during COVID? Did you write new content during COVID? Are you refreshing things during COVID? Compared to where you are a year ago, you might be running 20% higher traffic than a year ago. Well, are you converting? If you're not converting, your impression is you're failing. But what we want to do, and understand, the job of SEO is traffic. That's what we can generate. Ranking is a precursor to us getting the traffic, but the traffic is what we're trying to generate. And I think that most people need to just understand that conversion is the job of sales. That's your team. That's the client's team that does the conversion. For us to have a KPI that your sales will go up, unless you're going to give me control of your sales department, your pricing, your shipping, your customer service, everything that goes into repeat clients or word of mouth or brand, there's no KPI for revenue for SEO. We can generate traffic. And if the traffic's generated based on keywords and the keywords are appropriate, then of course that'll work. So we have to be able to show improvement in those areas. And that's part of the tools we use and things like that. Now, if you haven't done it in 5 years, it is time for an audit. And I'm going to quickly describe this. There's 2 kinds of audits. One is push the button and get free information. Usually the free information is focused on repair. Remember, there's multiple kinds of audits. One kind of audit is, this is stuff that you have to fix because it's broken. Then there's an audit, like what we typically do, which is, this is how to be more competitive. And I know I'll let you wrap your head around that. But the audit that just fixes things makes you just like the million other sites that just fix things. That doesn't make you more competitive. It just puts you in the game. You have to fix it to be even on the field, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be number 1, 2, or 3 out of 10 million results. That's where SEO comes in. Real SEO is the competitive component, not the repair component on your website. But you have to get a proper audit. And we've got blog posts on the good, the bad, the ugly of audits. So you might want to glance at that. And in some companies, there's stakeholders. And the stakeholder typically is sitting there worrying about, am I going to get my bonus? How am I doing? Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? And those are things that you're going to have to do better at. Get the stakeholders on your side. Usually it's more than just a pizza and beer, but get a stakeholder on your side, get them to be supportive. We've had cases where people from the board of directors have had company meetings where they've actually said, the company is all in on SEO. This is what we're going to be doing. And if you don't support it, you can go elsewhere. It's very similar to the Netflix case right now. If you aren't on board, the company's going to lose, and the company's going to see traffic drops. By the way, one of the things that is true is that a part of SEO is to preserve traffic, not always just to gain traffic. Sometimes in a highly competitive space, not losing traffic is a significant advantage. So those are things that we're going to have to pay attention to. If you do nothing, it goes away. Now, other than I'm really kind of fond of the gorilla, there's way too many myths out there. I've been around 26 years plus, since 96. And there's all sorts of myths. One of them is SEO is unreliable. Untrue. Yeah, Google changes the algorithm 12 times a day. I got it. That doesn't make it unreliable. It just means you got a moving target. Somebody is going to rank number one. I think it's best that it be our clients, but it's not SEO that's unreliable, and it isn't Google that's unreliable. Google and SEO are both pretty well represented in the search results. Google does it, we fix it, we rank. We have to do strategic things. We have to be thinking better, bigger, faster than the competition, but it's not unreliable. Can you measure it? I once did a presentation that said the analytics tools that are telling you the traffic by keyword. This is way back before the not provided snafu for organic. Back then, I was even saying it's unreliable. That part. See, Google can tell you that they clicked on this keyword and you got traffic for it. That is reliable. But they can't tell you that the person's web history was these 5 prior queries, and therefore the search result was biased by their web history, because that doesn't show up in analytics. So it's a fallacy that we ever had true tracking by keyword, because Google for years has accepted web history, all that kind of stuff. So what can we measure? Well, we can measure traffic. We can tell you that traffic to this page went up. We can optimize for a page and tell you its ranking is improving. We can do that, and you can measure that. And if the rankings are improving and the traffic is going up, there's a high correlation to revenue goes up. And that's what we can do. The last one, believe it or not, I still hear it. I've had people come to me and say, well, I did SEO a year ago, so I'm done. That isn't the way it works. SEO is done when Google stops changing the algorithm and all of your competition has died. Until then, every day for each keyword, think about this, for each keyword that you query that gets 1 million results, not even 10, 1 million results, that means if you divide it by the number of days in a year, if they only edited their page once a year, you got 30,000 competitors changing their page daily for that keyword. For each keyword that you have in your list, 30,000 competitors changing for each keyword. And Google changes the overall algorithm 12 times a day. They claim 5,000 times last year. We can take in a little allowance in there. I think that maybe some of those changes were fixing the things they changed the day before. Sometimes that happens. But here we are. We're dealing with Google. It's a moving target. Bottom line, there's no easy button for SEO. If all I do is get you links, that's not SEO. I can change your life on page. on page, on site. Change your trust. Tell people about it and they'll link to you. But I don't have to go spin content out or buy links to do that. Some of the things that Google says, by the way, are perhaps imprecise. I'll say that. Click-through rate. I've got quotes from both sides of the game that, of course, we don't measure click-through rate. And then the other side, the engineers say, any company not paying attention to click-through rate is an idiot. Well, they can't both be true. So, yeah, there's no easy button. We don't know what the absolute rules are. Google says things that are based on pieces of Google that maybe don't understand everything. And that's part of the problem. So what can we do? Well, we can also educate people. Now, Google just recently came out with their SEO certification course, and they put some things in it that were incorrect. And the entire SEO community came down on them with two great big mallets, because they actually had a slide in their training course that said the keyword density cannot be greater than 2%. Wonderful. They had never passed their course past the search team. This was done by an education team in a room over there, but they didn't talk to the search team. And they've now removed the slide. But you see things like that happen, and there's errors that creep in, and people assume things at Google because they don't know anything better. And it's a problem. So let's look at your site. What are you going to teach people? Have you ever played the game of telephone where I whisper in one person's ear, my cousin has big feet, and they whisper it around the room, and it comes out at the end, my cousin is Bigfoot. An entirely different concept, similar but morphed. And a lot of people have learned SEO that way. I think you need to learn SEO from somebody that knows SEO. I think that's important. But more important is if you are that person and you know SEO, you better be teaching your web team. You better be teaching other people in marketing. You better all be singing from the same hymn book, and it better be right. You need to model. You can't mess this up. You mess it up and you have a lot of people going in the wrong direction. One of my stories, and by the way, I love stories, was about a friend of mine who went to work for a major publication in New York. His first day at work, he's going down the source code. He wanted to see what was going on with his major site, his homepage. He's reading down the homepage of his major site. And halfway down the page was a comment. And the comment said, invisible text added for search engines. That's an education flaw. Somebody in their web design team heard somewhere that you can hide code that influences the search engines. You can hide it and not have the search user see it, sort of like white on white or hiding behind an image or something like that. And this code they thought was helping them when in fact it was spam. Now, there's a couple lessons there. One, you have to educate your web team, because if they don't know any better, they're going to creep in with these things. And the second thing is never document your spam. Maybe the second one's more important. But we have a burden here. We have to be the expert. We have to train the company. We have to educate. We have to make sure at least the basics are understood by everybody. Now, obviously, we have a training curriculum. We have free training out on the web. Our website has thousands of pages on how to do SEO for free. There's lots of information out there for free, including some from Google, which I think is hopefully you're going to look at it and understand it's free. How many people, show your hands, how many people here believe that Google's in the business of making money? Yeah, it's like 100,000 people raise their hand. They're a public company. That's what they're supposed to do. So when they teach you SEO, and if it doesn't work, my goodness, you might have to buy pay-per-click. Who wins? So, I would take everything with a grain of salt. I would pay a lot of attention to it. You need to be the expert, and then you need to take your experience and you have to propagate it across the business and make that happen. Then, when everybody understands exactly the same, this is how it works. This is where it gets to be somewhat easier. Key performance indicators. Remember, you're not responsible for revenue, you're responsible for traffic. You want to have rankings increase because they're precursors to traffic. That's something that you can measure, quantify, you can produce reports on it. You can take analytics data, total traffic. You can do that. In pay-per-click, you can count perhaps conversions. You might have call tracking. You may have other things that imply SEO is working. But the true number is my rankings are improving and my traffic is going up. It's the job of the website, the job of sales to convert them. That's why marketing and sales are different teams. You got to be able to do that. So revenue shouldn't really be your big KPI. But I will tell you, senior management, if revenue goes up, they're willing to invest more in SEO. So understand, traffic is the generator. Now, part of a lot of companies, I went to a company that said, hi, we want to sign up some people for your training, which was great. And I said, how many? And they said, well, we're a big company. We think we'll have 60, but probably 40 will sign up. So they put out an open invite. Anybody want to take a training course? Tell me, I'll put you on the list. They had over 400 signups. People are interested in SEO. They want to learn. Just make it available. It isn't that hard. Even IT wants to expand their knowledge. If I were writing a resume and I'm a web designer, I want to add SEO to that. Everybody wants to be able to understand what they're doing and broaden what it is they do for a living. You're going to have a phenomenal number of people interested in learning SEO. I have taught courses at companies where the president of the company on public companies, the president showed up in the class. They're that involved. They need to know what's going on and where they're spending their money. So understand, you align the goals, you get people understanding what SEO can do, and suddenly the job of SEO and the implementation becomes easier. They see that, if I implement SEO, I might get a 30% organic boost in traffic. What is that? That's bottom line numbers, folks. That is success. That is your resume. That is a great many things. Now, if all you do is have a team that does nothing but repair, that isn't enough. You run all the smart tools out there. They tell you what to repair. Not a one of them says, because you're in this industry and because you have this kind of a product and because your competition is that, you need to do this. Not a single tool is going to do that. Tools give you data. Tools tell you what to fix. But there's a difference between data and wisdom, and you have to apply that. And that means you set your goals, you understand what you need to do from an SEO point of view, you get everybody trained and on the same orientation, and then you move forward. And then you can propagate it throughout the business. And that makes a lot of sense. So our recommendation is do a pilot. We have a lot of people that have 5, 6, 7 domains. They come to us and they say, I just want to do this one. We kick butt. Now they want to do all of them. We have even people who say, I want an audit on this one, and then they buy 5 more. Our audits are pretty legendary. So we have a lot of people that do a lot of things, but if you have naysayers and you don't have people supporting you and IT doesn't have the budget or hasn't been trained, or you don't have all of your own team singing from the same hymn book, a pilot is the right way to do it. Pick one, all right? Make it a silo out of your website. I'm just gonna optimize this product area, but you gotta start at the homepage. Understand that. You can't do some sort of cluster down in the bottom, right? You have to homepage down. You can do that. It is not as effective, quite frankly, but you can do that. Or if you have multiple domains, pick one. Or, let's see what happens. Let's optimize all the code in my blog. Or, Bruce, you told me that if I refresh my content, Google will like it better. Yeah, my content is 5 years old. Google doesn't seem to like it as much. Let's refresh that, or let's optimize that, or let's redo our inbound link profile, or let's do a project and see what happens. And then you start gaining speed. I think you also have to do, if you're doing a whole site, by the way, this is important. If you're doing an entire site, the first optimization is long tail, 4-word, 5-word phrases. If you walk up and give me a 1-word phrase and say, Bruce, that's your project, I'm going to have to build the foundation, right? I can't just take a head term and all of a sudden get it ranked without building subpages. There's an awful lot of stuff to that. So let's do the right thing. Let's repair things, absolutely, but let's be competitive. I'm going to make a final statement. Our job as SEOs is to win the SEO battle. Every keyword is a separate battle. Overall, it's a war, but every keyword is a separate battle. Every keyword has a separate algorithm. I don't know if you know that, but every keyword has its own algorithm. They have different intents. They have entirely different personas, perhaps. Even synonyms may have different personas, and they're synonyms of the same meaning. So it's a complex thing. And yeah, you got to fix things. Okay, and you got to go and do it. But, you can't not do it. You have to have the foundation, and then you build on top of that. And that's the way you do it. That's fundamentally my presentation. We have plenty of things to do in order to implement all these things. As soon as you get into one of these SEO projects, along comes hi, it's time to migrate, or we just bought a product or a company, or we just have this new thing, or, my team maybe went and got new jobs. I don't know. But folks, change is inevitable. But if you can do the training, you can get the budget, you can have friends in your web team, your marketing job is so much easier. And the bottom line is synergistic. It is faster. It is more effective, and you're going to kick butt. That's just the start. Of course, a lot of stuff comes a little bit later when we do the Q&A. Dylan?
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a lot more stuff comes later. And just to reiterate, what you've been discussing here, getting company buy-in is one of the most common struggles we hear about from our clients. It is very, very common. And we know it can be frustrating because when you know how important something is, but nobody else seems to take it seriously, you can feel kind of helpless. So that being said, the good news is that this presents an opportunity for us, because since this is a common issue, you can use that as an argument for how your company can get ahead of your competition. the most effective SEO is by a team effort, right? And the more efficient your team, the better off you are at improving your SEO. We often see people try to do SEO all by themselves without any support, and we believe that's an unnecessary uphill battle. So when thinking about how to build the most effective SEO team, consider this. What if we were part of that team with you? What if the best way to get company buy-in is if we helped your team become SEO experts? Now, we don't doubt your knowledge or your experience with SEO, but we often see people overwhelm themselves by trying to figure out all there is to know about SEO, by trying to keep up with the constant changes. One of the most crucial things you need to remember is that SEO is never done. Like Bruce mentioned earlier, and this is just a harsh truth, is that SEO is done when Google stops changing things and all of your competition has died. It's a little rough, but it's the truth. So until that happens, there's lots to keep up with, and that means you need a way to stay up to date on what is changing. Now, some of you may know this, but Bruce used to hold a quarterly 5-day SEO training course here in Simi Valley, California. It was in-person training with Bruce, and people would fly in from all different parts of the world to take the course. I participated in it many times, and folks, I can't tell you how many people would fly in and take the course for a second or third time. We've even had a select few people, I think, take the course around 10 times. We had multiple people keep coming back to Bruce's presentation, and because it would change in conjunction with the updates and changes that were happening to SEO. The point being that there was always something new to learn. So that's why people kept coming back. We have heard from many students and clients over the years, people just like you, who have said that this deep dive training in SEO gave them the competitive edge they needed to increase their results and just increase their traffic. But unfortunately, that in-person training experience was put on hold for us once the pandemic hit. Couldn't do in-person training stuff back in the day. So we're still exploring whether or not we will return to that in-person training in the future. But we definitely wanted to change things up a little bit here. And one of the things that we definitely wanted to look into was producing a new online training program that allows you to take the training remotely. And it also allows you to take the course at your own pace, which is something you couldn't do in person. It's called the Bruce Clay SEO Training and Membership Program. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about it because it's a lot more than just your standard SEO training course. No. This is a membership program that will give you access to tons of SEO resources at your disposal. We didn't just want to provide one video training course of Bruce talking about SEO. So we built an entire program that gives you tons of SEO resources at your disposal that makes this the gold standard in SEO training. So what comes with a membership program? Well, if you sign up and become a member, you're going to have access to a few things. First and foremost, you're going to have access to the entire SEO training course presented by Bruce. This is the heart of the membership program, and this course alone extends out to over 15 hours long. So you'll have plenty to start with if you sign up. As you can see on this slide here, it's broken up into 12 sections that cover multiple SEO topics. We cover things like SEO concepts, linking strategies, content, mobile SEO, best practices, and the most popular subject, siloing. Trust us when we say that 90% of the people who have taken the training course, they say that siloing is the most eye-opening, so you'll definitely want to know more about that one if you don't know what we're talking about. There's a ton more here that we also cover in the course, but the way you experience or take the training is actually pretty simple. It's a standard video player that has all the sections we mentioned earlier on the left here, and each module contains multiple videos within each section. We also include a deep dive interview with Bruce and myself at the end of each section to kind of give you more in-depth insights on the topic. So this training course is just like the in-person classroom course Bruce used to provide, but now you can view it at your own pace. We actually have a few demo videos of what it's like to view the course, so feel free to check that out on our site as well if you want to get more of a preview of what it looks like. Now, the training course is the main feature we offer in the membership program, but it's certainly not the only feature. We have multiple other resources available to you once you sign up and become a member. I'm going to share with you a little bit more about them now. You're also going to have access to what we call mini courses. And these are essentially deep dive videos that we have produced where we take a particular SEO subject and we kind of jump into the weeds to help you better understand it. One of the latest ones we just did was Google's page experience update. And if you don't know anything about that, I would highly recommend you sign up just to catch up on that alone. That was kind of last summer, and it's one of those things where it definitely affected you if you didn't pay attention to what was going on. So I would definitely look into that. We're actually going to probably be releasing our next mini course next week, and it's about video optimization, about how you can optimize your videos better. And again, we're getting more and more reports that videos are becoming a lot more important in the ranking factor. I think as recently, it was like somewhere between 30 and 40% of results are going to be video rankings from YouTube. That's a huge space that you need to be part of. So we're going to be releasing a video on that. So basically, yeah, again, we're doing the video course. And yeah, so there's a lot more that's going to be involved with the membership program. One of the other things that we have here is our live Q&A calls. This is one of our favorite features. So every month we hold a Q&A session with Bruce where our members can ask any SEO related questions they want. A lot of times when you're taking the training course, you're going to have, you know, a long list of questions that come up as you're going through it. And jumping on these Q&A calls with Bruce is a great way to help get the answers you're looking for. I tune in and it kind of help moderate the questions with him. So you can also head over to our YouTube channel right now. Just type in Bruce Clay on YouTube, and you can actually see some of the snippets from the Q&A session. It's fairly similar to this format that we're doing right now. So you just submit your questions. You're not limited to one question. You can submit them as much as you want, and Bruce will provide an answer here. You get direct access to the father of SEO himself. So that's where you want to go if you want to get your questions answered there. So one of the other features that we have here, and speaking of questions, is our series called the Ask Us Anything series. So since the Q&A session is live and it only can be done once a month, we wanted to create a library of videos answering commonly asked SEO questions. As a member, you can submit a question to us at any time, and one of our SEO experts is going to follow up with you and try to provide an answer. But there are more broader common questions that we pretty much receive on a regular basis that we wanted to catalog and produce a 1 to 3 minute video answering so that we didn't have to keep re-answering the same question over and over again. So we usually produce at least 2 Ask Us Anything videos every month. So you're getting brand new videos every month as a member. That's really important because we don't just let it stay dormant. Another cool feature here is that you'll be able to download our ebooks. These are very extensive and provide you with a thorough overview on what to do with the topic that it's about. They're a great read through if you want to have the best knowledge at hand, and comes highly recommended for any SEO team. They're very extensive, and you'll get as much information as you can hear anywhere else on these things. There's also our discussion forums where members can post and share different SEO topics to discuss with other members. We wanted to present a way for members to communicate with each other because we believe some of the best pieces of information come from those who are also learning. It's a great way to connect and learn from each other. It's a great resource. So it kind of makes it more of an interactive experience. And lastly, you're going to have access to our SEO toolset, which is our own brand of SEO tools you can use for free to help improve your website. Tools like our WordPress plugin can help you find better keywords in real time as you write your content. Now, the SEO toolset is technically separate from the membership, but you can access it for free if you become a member, hence why there's a different URL here. So just in case you look confused, you can also get it without the membership if you want, but it comes for free if you do sign up. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 kind of deal. So as you can see, this is clearly more than just a training course that you take one time and then you're done. Now, that's not how SEO works. It's a constant learning process, like we keep saying. You need a way to stay up to date and to continue learning SEO as it changes and evolves. Every month, we're adding at least 2 to 3 videos to the program. And even we've had to go back and update certain sections in the training course, just like we had to do in the past with in-person. It's keep coming back. This thing's going to keep changing and updating because we wanted people to get the most up-to-date information on SEO. We also have our SEO team of experts who can answer your questions as you take the course. So there's plenty of support here if you need it. That's why the membership program is the gold standard here in SEO training. You're getting tons of SEO depth on a regular basis. So how do you sign up? Well, what you want to do is head over to seotraining.com, create an account, select your payment plan, and you're all set. It takes less than 5 minutes to sign up and become a member. It's really easy, and you can have access to all these great resources. And best of all, because you all took time out of your day to be here with us, which we really appreciate, we are offering you a special discount to sign up for the membership program by May 27th. If you go to seotraining.com right now and sign up using promo code BruceClay2022, you'll get a $300 discount. Now, that promo code only applies to our annual membership plan, which is our best offer because you're saving more money overall than our monthly or quarterly plans. So if you want to save a ton of money by signing up, use that promo code for the annual plan. It is BruceClay2022, all one word, no spacing, but this discount is only available until May 27th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So be sure to sign up as soon as you can to get that discount. Again, if you don't want to sign up for the annual membership plan, that's totally fine. You can still sign up for our monthly and quarterly membership plans, but you won't get the discount. So the choice is yours. And that's a good deal, folks. And there's no better person to be learning SEO from than Bruce. Like we've mentioned before, getting company buy-in means you're building a team. And if you sign up for this training membership program, you're essentially adding us as part of your team. If you want to improve your SEO and you want to build a team, you probably want to have SEO experts on your team, and we can provide that for you. So, and sure, we don't deny that you could probably go find other SEO training courses out there, ones that are probably even free, free. But that might be the biggest mistake you can make, which is listening to free advice about this. I mean, any SEO expert worth their salt isn't going to hand over all of their knowledge for free. And even if they did, chances are that their training courses are a one and done deal that do not reflect how SEO changes over time. And I don't know about you, but a training course that is only temporarily relevant isn't really going to be useful for any long-term growth. You won't get nearly as much insight and interaction as we can provide within our membership program. So head over to SEOtraining.com. Again, it's like right here, the URL right here in our little backgrounds. Sign up to become a member today using our promo code and invest in the long term. Invest in the experts so we can help you grow your business. All righty? So go do that today. But for now, we are finished for our presentation, which means it's time for the fun part. You can go ahead and type your questions now for Bruce in the Q&A box. I see that some questions have already kind of come in. So we're going to do our best to answer as many as we can until it's time to go. If we do run out of time and we didn't have a chance to get to your question, we will do our best to follow up with you later in an email. We'll take account of all the questions that have come in. But if you sign up for SEOtraining.com, we'll be able to do another Q&A session with Bruce very, very soon. And you get to ask your questions as many times as you'd like. So be sure to sign up while we're doing this. All right. Anything else, Bruce? Any final thoughts before we move into Q&A?
Well, sort of in summary of one thing that people may ask. Once you sign up for the membership, you get to take that 15-hour course as often as you want. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people will take it and play it at normal speeds, mm-hmm. Write down their questions. They may have some things that were vague. Mm-hmm. I'll call it vague. They weren't exactly sure. So mm-hmm. Then they'll go back through it and they'll play it at 1.5 speed. Mm-hmm. By the way, the good news is at 2x, I do not sound like a chipmunk.
So you were very adamant about finding a player that didn't have that happen.
But what you can do is you can play the sessions, and once you've taken the whole course, you can say, I just want to play siloing. And you can take it at 1.5 speed. And then you say, okay, I got it now. Or they can take the deep dive that you did on that Dylan did on siloing. And the fact is, we have resources because SEO is truly not one and done. And as a membership, if you say, hey, Bruce, I've got 10 people I want to sign up, ask me. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a rate. Mm-hmm. But I really believe in our industry, and I believe that if your team is well educated and understands why this is important, I think then we have ourselves a program that'll allow your company to beat the competitors. Mm-hmm. You're all pulling on the same end of the rope. You all understand the importance of these changes. You mm-hmm. get it. You can prioritize. You can implement. And that really is, I think, going back to the main presentation, I think that's a very, very big part of how do you succeed at SEO. Mm-hmm. Because I believe if everybody in your company has a different understanding, it's chaos. Mm-hmm. You're going to be fumbling through it instead of driving. Mm-hmm. And that's something you just got to do. Anyhow, Q&A.
Very well said. All right, let's get to as many questions as we can before we have to wrap up. First question, Bruce. Now that many businesses are working from home online, for Google, do you have to show a physical address versus PO box?
No. So the answer to your question is Google, it depends on where you're putting your address. If you put it on your website, you can use a PO box, you can use schema to describe it. There's an address schema. There's actually HTML called address, which most people don't even know. So there's a lot of things you can do on a website to identify it. However, having said that, Google has previously said you should not use PO boxes, or an example would be where you can go to an executive suite and rent a mailbox and an answering service, because they know the addresses of most of those companies, they'll figure it out. But to give an example, I was using a PO box when I started my company. I was on a dining room table. I didn't give my home address. I used PO box. Well, the problem is the post office and my postnet outlet was literally 2 doors apart. And what happened is the post office kept taking my mail and putting it in a PO box instead of giving it the postnet to put in my slot there. Mm-hmm. So I asked the manager of the post office, what should I do? And he said, oh, well, just give that address and use suite number. I did it. There was zero hiccup anywhere. So to answer your question, the preference for usability would be to actually have an address. Mm-hmm. But if you have a PO box and that is your only address, then I think you could probably use that. I haven't seen any hiccups if you do.
All right. Cool. All right. Let's get to another question. What are the main objections of your customers before the pilot?
What are the main objections for doing a pilot?
Before the pilot, before you get to it.
All right. So, wow, that goes on and on. Usually, understand there are different people within organizations with different motives. It's a little bit like, let's imagine that there's some sort of politics, maybe. The people in the pay-per-click team, you can't track SEO. They'll argue that you can't track it. You can track traffic organically, but you can't track it to keyword, and you can do that in pay-per-click. So we should do pay-per-click. Pay-per-click is at the top of the page. Organic is down. Nobody ever clicks there. Wrong. You'll hear things where people are passing on wives' tales, or the most effective way to do it is be at the top of the Google search result page. By the way, there's a lot of information that is a good idea, but there's also information that says only 42% of the people will click an ad, even though the ad is dominating the top of the page. Less than half, right? You can read statistics. This is an interesting concept. I read a statistic that said 50% of the people do this. Well, folks, you ought to think about it. That says 50% of the people don't do that, right? But they wrote it in such a way as to color that as being more successful. I don't know. In your company, there may be a lot of different things. By the way, one of the things in pay-per-click is you should always buy your brand. If you're the only one bidding on your brand, you don't buy your brand. Organic should dominate for your brand. Mm-hmm. And if the answer is, well, organic traffic is dropping, the question you have to ask, there's two questions here. If my organic traffic is dropping, did I increase my pay-per-click spend? Or did Google put something at the top of the search result page that pushed me down? Because if my ranking didn't change, my impressions or searches didn't change, it's either because everybody got pushed down or I'm actually paying for my traffic by buying ads. So there's a lot of different things you can do. It's not always that the algorithm changed. By the way, understand this, write this down. It is not always that the algorithm changed. It could be that Google changed the format of the search result page. That's not an algorithm change, folks, but that can cause traffic changes. So remember to pay attention to that. If Google local services appeared or some sort of carousel appeared or more people are buying ads or there's a local pack or there's I'm coming up with all sorts of reasons to push down organic. And not all of them are on every page. It's based upon what Google thinks makes more money for Google. But folks, these are things that can impact traffic. It isn't always an algorithm change. I'm going to tell you right now, a vast majority of voice searches are going to give you organic results. If you ignore organic, then you're writing off anybody on a mobile device that does a voice search. You can't do that.
Right.
Sorry. Long-winded answer, I guess.
No worries. All right, let's get to another one. I have a website that creates ASP.NET dynamic pages. I have been told that search engines like Google can index these pages via browser cache. Is that true? And if so, how if these pages are created instantaneously through a database?
Well, one of the ways you can do it is you can implement AMP, which is my least favorite thing in the entire world. And you shouldn't do it, but you could. You can actually run a tool that converts your dynamic page into a static initial HTML page that Google can spider so that they can index it. Now, Google's been running more often than not a headless browser version to create a document object model, DOM. By the way, DOM, that's what it stands for. Document Object Model. And what a document object model is it's a layout of what would be rendered on a screen in a browser. I mean, it runs the CSS, it runs the JavaScript, it loads the images. It's the layout that would appear in a browser, basically. It's an HTML rendering, but it has all the components. So if your dynamic content is able to load the initial version, then in a DOM, it's going to show up. Understand that it may also be the case that you just killed your Core Web Vital performance speed. But that may be something you're willing to do. Take a 5% hit on your ranking algorithm for the fun of doing dynamic work. Now, having tried to oversimplify it, this is something that we'd have to look at. There's all kinds of languages out there to do dynamic this and dynamic that. We're finding that the real way to get Core Web Vital speeds and things like that is you even convert JavaScript to CSS if you can. You simplify things, you load things as fast as you can. My website loads very, very fast, very fast. But if I were dynamically loading everything, I think my overhead would be way too high and my scores would suffer. But this is something we actually have to look at on a case-by-case basis. There may be some things that we can do in prefetch. There may be some things that, let me flip it over. We can lazy load things as well to tell Google not to load it on initial page load so that the rendering is faster. So there's almost the opposite direction capable of being used. But if you have to be dynamically loading, and if you have to be ASP.NET, unfortunately, then it's not my favorite. Matter of fact, I avoid it. But if that's something that you have to do, then I think you have other problems. You have speed problems, you have rendering problems, you have different browser issues. It's a complex thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't have a better answer. It's something we'd have to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like if you go to SEOtraining.com and want to reach out and become a member, our SEO team can help walk you through this, and we can help figure this out together. We also offer services as well. It's a whole separate thing, but again, that's more like we actually go look at your site and actually go deep dive and involved, but that's a whole separate program. But again, we do offer that as well. So let's jump into another question here while we have time. So I'm pretty much a one-person team that manages a single website for a nonprofit company that educates banks and financial institutions. Along with the responsibility of the website, I am also responsible for designing content for marketing as well as producing publications. All you have mentioned seems to be way more scope than I can handle, let alone have the time to handle. So my question is, am I in over my head? Am I inherently set up to fail in this endeavor with a team of one?
Not necessarily. In most cases, I'd say you have a serious problem. If the website is small, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Many nonprofits function almost like a news agency, and they have lots of blog entries and lots of data and things like that that they have available on their website. Think about it this way. Let's suppose I have 10,000 pages on my website. I'm an SEO site. There can't be too many pages on SEO, right? So I only have 4,000. I still think that's a lot. I have to maintain those. If I let them age, my overall quality score is going to drop. You have to maintain your content. That, by the way, that's another area where a lot of people suffer. They write it once, they publish it once, and they never refresh it or prune it off. Mm-hmm. And over time, your quality score drops because you're not maintaining your content. Mm-hmm. Google doesn't know if the content's right or wrong, but if your competition is maintaining their content by the same keyword and you're not, Google does know that, and they know you're not maintaining your website. So if you're a one-armed paper hanger, which is the way I think you described it, you have to do everything. Your day is going to be pretty well distributed across content, reporting, on page, off page, server. You're doing it all. Can you do it on a small enough site? Yes. Now, and let me back up. There are a number of SEO agencies out there that don't focus on having 100%. We focus 100% of our SEO analysts have a minimum of 10 years of experience. That's one of the things that we're known for. We have a whole army of experts. We're known for that. That's what we do. But there's an awful lot of companies out there that are in a local area, probably right down the street from you, that, for $500, they'll help you out. I understand nonprofit. I understand money doesn't grow on trees. And I understand nobody is going to really want to pay anybody a lot of money to do that. I think your question is, what is the nonprofit's value of traffic? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Does traffic help or hurt? Does branding help or hurt? Does top of mind recall help or hurt? Mm-hmm. If there's no advantage to SEO, you do as much as you can, and you're going to be a one-person army for a long time. We have people come to us from nonprofits. Sometimes they will buy what we call a block. They'll buy 20 hours of our labor to do a quick review of their entire website and then tell them what to fix. And then we go away because they bought 20 hours and we used it. Something like that is really popular with nonprofits. And a retainer, hiring an agency is more expensive. But I do understand nonprofits are typically in an awkward situation. I don't know that you're ever going to have an army of thousands or twos, but if you're not able to keep up, then you have to plead your case.
Right. And I think, again, like I mentioned earlier, we get this a lot, the struggle with the company buy-in. Like it's very, very common. And I think you're not alone in the struggle to try and get people involved. But that's why we wanted to put on this presentation, is because we see this show up a lot with people. And one of the things we want to provide here is, again, there will be a replay of this webinar as well. Maybe go check out some of our other resources. Again, if you don't want to become a member, that's totally fine. We understand, but we have a lot of other resources like on our YouTube channel, on our sites, that showcase this point, which is you need company buy-in if you want your SEO team to be successful. Like there's no way a person can do this by themselves and have tremendous success. You can have some, but you're not gonna, just be the white knight that's solving everyone's problems if you're gonna do it alone. So that's why we want to provide these resources available to you. Maybe show them this presentation, maybe show them something that you can find on one of our websites that talks about this problem and says, like, hey, look, everybody, these people who are SEO experts are saying we can't do this alone. Like you need help. So be sure to kind of lean into this as much as you can. And again, we're here for your assistance if you need us. Okay, let's do 2 more questions, Bruce, and then we're going to wrap up. I am new to my company and currently the only SEO in a company of almost 500. I am desperately trying to make friends with my web team. The biggest challenge I have is delivering the results of an SEO audit, usually bad results. The web team commonly sees this as a slam to them and their work, which is creating a bit of a roadblock for buy-in. Any tips on nicely delivering a bad SEO audit to a web development team?
Oh yeah, your baby is ugly. Well, you don't deliver it to the team, you deliver it from the top down, I think. Murphy's Law, right? If it jams, force it. If it breaks, it needed replacing anyhow. Somebody decided the company needed an SEO. Somebody decided there are things that are broken that need to be fixed, and they hired you to do it. If that's the case, there had to be somebody in the company that fought for your role, that said, I need this. That's your first friend. Figure that out. Now, I've had cases where, as I mentioned before, the board of directors had to come down and say, hey, everybody, you're either on board or you're out of here. I'm not saying that's going to happen in a company of 500. It's probably manufacturing things. Maybe you can do an end run and go to sales and say, I think I have a way of fixing the website to give you 30% more qualified leads. Are you interested? That might get somebody's attention, might get you some support. The other thing is, don't do an audit. Start with training. Pick the guy that runs your web team and say, I'm looking to set this up internally. I think it'd make a lot of sense, but I don't want to do it if you don't like it. So can we go through this together? and maybe get them through some training.
Mhm.
Let them understand that there's two ways to do something, and many times the default is to do it the wrong way. The word on the street is always not the best word. It could be that instead of hitting them with all the things wrong, hit them with what is SEO, right?
Mhm.
We have, and maybe I'm giving this away, but we have a 1 hour, you can go to the web and search on my site. So do a search for Executive Guide to SEO, Bruce Clay. It is a 1 hour abbreviated overview of SEO. You can't teach SEO in 1 hour, but you can give somebody an overview about why it's important. And that's what we did. It's perfect for CMOs. It's an executive overview. Recommend it to people and say, hey, I'm looking for feedback. Is this enough, or do I need to go deeper? Right? You can tell them and beg for help that you're going to be doing a program around training and you'd like their input. And, people usually say yes to a request to help. They don't particularly like being told their baby's ugly, but, sometimes that works. Get an advocate, maybe sales on your team, the guy that sponsored you into the business, and people at the top, see if they'll help you select a good training program that you can recommend to management. And, at least get some people thinking SEO. If you can't get people, here's what'll happen. And sorry for saying it this way, but you'll have a design meeting and you'll talk about SEO because SEO is in the room. And then after a while, SEO isn't in the room and nobody's talking about SEO. And then before you know it, people are implementing things that hurt the website. Hey, we can do this. But all of a sudden your speed tanks. Or somebody somewhere says, hey, there's this new thing out there. Let's convert our content management system to this new system that Google hates. I mean, if you don't intervene at all those steps, they squirm away from you. You have to have involvement throughout the organization. And I think that audits, yeah, if it's a simple thing, conspicuous that this is wrong, an audit works if they already understand why SEO is important. If they don't understand why SEO matters, then telling them their baby is ugly is it's futile.
Right. Yeah. And I think you're right. Like maybe the approach is say we need to get them educated to understand where you're coming from. You're not there to make them look bad at their job. We need to work together. In order for us to work together, you have to understand where I'm coming from. We have the same goal, which is we want to increase sales. Like you are coming at it from one direction, I'm coming at it from another. And in order for us to be in sync, we have to understand what the other one's doing. And yeah, I think you're right. I actually just shared in the chat box the link to the executive guide overview. It's a completely free video. It's actually taken directly from the training course itself. It's just highlighted sections of the presentation. Again, it's a good place to start. Maybe share that with your sales team, your higher ups, and say, this is what is involved here. And one of the things we do cover, and I remember us going over this very extensively in the course, was we do see the web development teams a lot. They don't understand SEO. They don't get it. Their job is to make the site look engaging and to try to convert people. They're not concerned about all the indexing and the keywords and how it's all supposed to be in conjunction with what Google needs. It's a common disconnect we see, so you're not alone. But we do cover that in the training course about more extensively how you can try to convince your web development team about this. Because then there's your IT department as well. And you have to get them involved, and it's this whole process. So
let me comment one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
we have seen a lot of sites that have done redesigns,
Mm-hmm.
and their web design team that doesn't know about SEO had arbitrarily decided to change the structure of all the URLs,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't do any 301 redirects.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it in a third of the migrations and redesigns.
Mm-hmm.
No redirects, and every URL is changed. And it isn't because of any other reason than they had no understanding that it matters.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't understand you're losing all your link juice. They didn't understand you're going to get nothing but 404s from Google until they can respider your site in 90 days. They didn't understand any of that. And you see, it's because they're naive. They haven't been trained. They think it's okay. And that's a web design house.
Mm-hmm.
Your in-house team has the same problem. You got to train them, because there is nothing. You have people walking around with loaded guns
Mm-hmm.
that have no idea that change they're about to implement is going to destroy half your traffic.
Mm-hmm.
You have no idea that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Hidden text inserted for search engines. I mean, like, best of intentions, but disastrous results.
Mm-hmm.
Education.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not get advocates, people thinking the same way as you do, and supporting and believe that SEO done right is going to change their lives for the positive. If you can't get people understanding that, don't you dare tell them their baby's ugly.
I don't know why that analogy always cracks me up. Yeah, it's like just you're kind of doomed. All right, I think we have a few more questions that came in, but I think we're a little over time here, so I think we're going to wrap up now. Again, we have your questions listed here. We will have a team member follow up and be able to answer your question directly. We have not forgotten about them. We just are kind of a little out of time here. But again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We really appreciate this. If you want to keep asking more questions and have us help you out, this is kind of the main reason we wanted to put on this webinar, is that we are here to help you. SEOtraining.com, it's a great resource. Again, we can be part of your team going forward. And it's not just, watch our videos and leave us alone. No, like, we are constantly engaging with our members and talking to them and helping them through their sites. It's definitely something that I think would be a great benefit to you, especially for some of the questions we've seen come in. And this is the exact thing we want to do, is just help you out with this. So yeah, talk about maybe, getting your sales team involved, see if you can maybe, get more people involved that can take the training course and then, be able to interact with our members. We do Q&As like this every month. And again, it's, even if it's not just that one day a month, you can ask a question at any time, and our SEO team experts will reach out and help you through that. So there's a ton of more resources here. Again, do not forget that promo code BruceClay2022. Again, that offer is only good till May 27th at 5 p.m. So be sure to go through there and sign up for that now. Bruce, any parting words before we wrap up here?
No, I think, I have been in cases where I've done training at a company on site. This is pre-COVID, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And after the training class,
Mm-hmm.
I ask things, how many people here want to be part of a hit team as an extension of the SEO team?
Mm-hmm.
If you do, go see Betty or Bill or whoever and sign up so that they know to call you if they need help in your area.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the class, there's a line. Everybody wants to be part of it because now they understand it. Don't assume that people don't care just because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty exciting thing. This is why we're doing this, and people want to do it. So I really think that this is an opportunity for us to be able to do that. Certainly, you guys know how to reach us.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a great session.
Yeah, for sure. And again, more links are, I sent the executive overview guide on YouTube. start there. Maybe that's where you want to look and just review some of the stuff that comes directly from the training course and the membership program. Again, the course is over 15 hours long, so this is just a brief preview of what's there. It's very, very extensive. And again, it's not including everything else that's inside the membership program, all the Ask Us Anythings, Q&A, mini courses, the discussion forums. There's a lot more that goes into this. So be sure to check that out. Again, can't thank you all enough for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We will follow up with the questions that we didn't have time to answer. But until then, have a good rest of your day, and hope we all hear from each other soon. Thanks, everybody.